Hello guys and welcome to this video. Today I want to show you how to take your images from looking like this to this by adjusting one simple slider inside Lightroom that most people don't even look at and most people forget, and that is called calibration. Let's jump straight into it. So what is camera calibration? Essentially, it's just a setting that we use for fine-tuning color profiles. Now, what does that mean for us on a much simpler note? We use it to compensate for different issues in lighting or to adjust the way our camera sees colors. In previous Lightroom versions, this was called camera calibration, and the reason for that is that it allows editors to adjust the tone of the colors for specific camera. This image, for example, was shot on a Canon, and if we were to shoot this exact image under the exact same circumstances on a Nikon or a Sony camera, this image would not look the same as it does now. This is just because different camera manufacturers have different systems to render and process the colors. Now you're probably asking yourself, why should I use this slider, or what even makes it so powerful? Because I don't really care about how different colors profiles are perceived by different brands. And you are right, you shouldn't care. 99% of the photographers probably don't care about it. But let me show you the two reasons why I use it and why I love it and why you should probably use it too. Reason number one is because it works great when adjusting skin tones. Let's take this example right here and show you what I mean. So we go over to the calibration panel and we open it. As you can see, her face looks a little bit too orange because my Canon camera interpreted her face this way. She's definitely not an alien, so her face shouldn't be orange. So what you would normally do to adjust it is to go over to the white balance in your basics panel and adjust that. So if we go down with the white balance, you see that her face starts to look less orange. Okay, it still does look orange and it's still not as natural as I wanted it to be, but if I go beyond this point, you can see that everything in this image starts to look unnatural and too blue. So what you can do at this point to fix it is to go over to camera calibration and adjust the picture this way. So let's reset this white balance, let's go down a little bit, and let's move on to calibration. Here, as you can see, we have the tint of the shadows, which adjust whether your dark spots have a green or a purple tint. If we go this way, you can see that the shadows and the dark points start to get a little green. And if we go on the other hand, you can see that we start to get a lot more purple in the shadows. Okay, you can see here, it looks a little more purple. And then we have our RGB channels. We have the reds primary, the green primary, and the blue primary. And on these sliders, we can adjust the hue or the saturation of those prime colors. Now to better understand this, let's go back to camera basics and show you what I mean. Every image is made out of pixels, and those pixels are different combinations of reds, greens, and blues. If we go over to our histogram here, we can see that every pixel has a combination of red, green, and blue. So if we choose any spot in this image, okay, you can see that we have a combination of 61.5 red, 54.5 green, and 50% blue. What makes calibration so great when it comes to editing pictures is that it affects all the pixels in your image. So let's take this example. If I drag the red slider down, you can see that all the spots in the image are affected. All the picture changes, not just the actual red parts of the image. This is because every pixel in any given image has a value of red. Whether that would be 0 or 100%, every picture has some sort of red inside it. The same story applies to the green channel. If we drag this, you can see that everything gets affected, and the same applies to the blues. Now let's reset all this and let's start editing her face and make her face look more natural. So the first thing that we do is to select a spot that we would like to affect the most, and in our case is the face. And if I select this spot on her face, we can see that we primarily have reds, then we have greens, then blues in this exact order. So what you would normally do is just go over to the red and decrease the saturation. And as you can see, her face starts to look whiter, but in the same time, I don't like because all the reds in the image are affected and my image now looks less saturated. So what I can do is I can go over to the blue saturation and increase that. And this way I get a little more color in my image. If I increase this slightly, you can see that I start to get a lot of the colors back. And what I would normally do right now is just go over to the greens, increase the greens a little bit more and decrease the saturation. And as you can see, her face starts to look better right now. At this point, I just play around with the saturation a little more and you can see her face starts to get a lot more color. So as you can see, the calibration panel is great when it comes to editing faces. Let's pull them side by side. In this image right here, you can see that her face is orange, is not natural, okay? And in this one right here, you can see that I've started to get a lot more of the natural colors in the image. As I mentioned before, the calibration panel not only allows us to adjust the color profiles, but we can fix issues in lighting as well. Let me show you this graph so you understand what I mean. Here we have a graph that shows us how light is perceived at different times of the day and in different lighting scenarios. Let's take the first example. As you can see, the tungsten bulb image is reflecting more of the red parts of the image, okay? And in a tungsten bulb environment, you can expect to see more orange, reds and blacks. These are the color that will pop. And on the other hand, you will not have as many blues and aquas and greens that will pop. If we go over to the calibration panel and we drag the red slider, you can see that everything in this image changes. So for example, if you shoot in an environment that its main lighting source is a tungsten bulb, you can expect to see more of the reds and the oranges. And what you can do at this point to reduce the amount of reds that you get in the image is to go over to the calibration panel and adjust this accordingly until you see fit. And the reason why we use the calibration panel and not just the HSL panel is because with the calibration, we get an even look of the image. As you can see, if I adjust the reds, everything in the image changes. So we get a more even look. If I were to go over to the HSL panel and I adjust the reds, only the reds get affected. As you can see, this part here doesn't change. Let's take another example on the noon daylight. As you can see here, you get an even spread of the colors throughout your image. And the reason why calibration is so great when it comes to this sort of images is because once again you can achieve an even color. And if you change the saturation of a specific primal color such as red, you will affect the overall colors of the image. Okay, if we go over to the green primary, for example, and we play around with it, you can see that everything in the picture starts to get the same vibe. If we go over to this side right here, you can see that everything starts to get a different look. If we go to the other side, you can see right here that everything in the image starts to blend in. Let's see another example with an actual picture. Here, our model has a red face. If we zoom over his face, you can see that there's a lot of red here, which doesn't look very appealing. Now, what we can do is we can start our edit by adjusting the white balance. And if we go to this point, you can see that his face still looks red, but if I go with the white balance lower than this point, I start to get some odd colors. So I'm just gonna stop with my white balance here and go over to the calibration panel. Here I can do the exact same thing that I did in the previous image. Let's just adjust our exposure so you can see better. If we zoom over his face and we look at our histogram, we see that there's a lot of red in this image. So what we will do is we will go to the red primary first of all. As you can see, his face is more inclined to pink, so I will go to the opposite side of pink, which is orange, and I'll just desaturate this picture. And as you can see, I've already got a much clearer look. His face is not as orange anymore, and it blends well with this image. Just because I've adjusted his face, I don't want the background to look faded and blunt. So what I can do is I can just go over to the hue and drag it more to aqua and increase the saturation in this picture. And as you can see, I start to get a lot of the details back whilst his face is still natural. I can just adjust the saturation in the reds a little more. And as you can see, his face looks more natural, and I've only adjusted the calibration panel and the white balance. Moving on to reason number 2 why I love this slider is just because it gives me more creative help. And what do I mean by this? I can discover new nuances of colors and can give my images a complete different look. If we were to only have the HSL color slider, we would be able to affect only one specific color at the time. So if I just go to the HSL panel and adjust the reds, you can see that only the reds are affected in this image and nothing else in the background. Don't get me wrong, HSL is great for what it's meant to do, but why I love the calibration so much is because if I drag this, okay, you can see that the whole picture starts to get a new vibe. And this is something really great for us creators, that we can experiment and start to develop our own set of colors and our own style of editing just by using tools like this that are available to us. If I go to the green primary and adjust it, the whole image gets a different look. We can use the saturation to boost the colors and make the image pop more. Now let's take another example, and I want to show you a landscape picture. And the reason why I want to use this is because camera calibration not only allows me to edit portraits and edit skin tones, it allows me to discover new colors as well. So let's start this edit from scratch. You can see that there is nothing done to this image. So what I would love to do is just go over to the calibration panel and just start playing around and see where we land. So I'm just gonna start off by adding a little more magenta to this image. So I'm just moving the shadows towards magenta, and I want to move over to the reds here, and I really want to make them pop. And just because I have this right here, and I want to make sure that everything in this image just pops and it looks very, very good. So as you can see, if I adjust this slider, everything in the image changes, okay? But I don't want to over exaggerate, and I want to keep things real. So I'm just gonna move it towards red and increase the saturation slightly, just so I can get this nice boat popping. Right now, I'll move on to the green primary, and I wanna move this slightly towards this color right here, just because this matches this. Let's increase the saturation here as well and see where we land. And now with the blue primary, I want to increase the aquas in this image, so I'll just move this towards aqua, probably slightly decrease the saturation, and here we go. Here is what we land in. Let's just deselect this. As you can see, guys, the image just has a complete different vibe, and I've only adjusted the camera calibration. As you can see here, everything kind of looks faded and everything looks just bland. But if I'm using camera calibration and I just get the colors back to life, you can see what kind of tones I get in this image. Let's quickly do a before and after so you can see the images side by side. Guys, this is the power of the camera calibration. If you learn it and if you use it in your arsenal, you will get some really awesome edits and some really great color combinations that will definitely take your editing to the next level. And guys, that was it. This was the camera calibration panel inside Lightroom. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for future tutorials. My biggest recommendation, as always, is to just go out there, take a bunch of pictures and experiment what you've just learned, because this is the only way you will really understand how to use camera calibration properly. Use the calibration panel in your own art and develop your own unique editing style. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.